A good conversation can shift the direction of change forever. Would you leave it to chance? Join the authors of Design to Change and explore this series of conversations with designers and event owners. Driven by the need and conversations with event owners and event designers who use the event canvas around the world, this series explores the depths of conversations to elevate your abilities to look and act beyond the now. Episodes are hosted by Ruud Janssen, Roel Frissen, Dennis Lehrer, and Paul Rookens, with illustrious changemakers, designers, and pioneers in the field of design and beyond. To explore these conversations and additional content, visit designtochange.online. For now, let's start the conversation.
Conversations.
So welcome from IMAX in Frankfurt. This is the last day of IMAX, and as you could hear in the jingle, we are here with illustrious changemakers around the world, and we have one from the other side of the world, live from San Diego, in Frankfurt right now. Carl Winston. Carl, welcome.
It's good to be with you. It's been a long time we've been working together.
Yeah, that is exactly true. Can you maybe, for the listeners, introduce yourself a little bit? Where you're from? What do you do?
Sure. Again, Carl Winston, and I'm from San Diego State University. I'm the founding director of what is called the Payne School, P-A-Y-N-E, not P-A-I-N in American English. And we teach hospitality and event management and have been doing so for 25 years.
But you're doing much more than that, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of very interesting things going on in our school. We own a couple of nonprofits. I own a business that consults with multinational companies around the world on talent and talent acquisition, and just have a great time and a great life, honestly, and inspired a lot by the Event Design Collective and the work you've done.
Thank you very much. I think it's interesting, right? So you're saying, like, I'm at San Diego State University, but then again, right? So you're doing so many things, so to say, on the side. Can I say that? And it's very inspiring. I think many people in education should do more things in real life, so to say, right? Not only in universities. How is your take on it? Because you're doing that for a reason, I guess.
Yeah. That's a great question and topic. We have a history in academia of being called the ivory tower, and this is a very European concept of keeping the academics safe from the crowds and keeping them remote so they can think. And it's largely true today. The tower doesn't exist, but the isolation does. And a large number of the people who are doing education today around the world are isolated from the actual professions they're teaching their students about. And we're in a very applied discipline, as you know. And it's difficult to teach event production if you're not producing events, for example. Yeah. So rather than employing a lot of very smart people with PhDs, I employ a lot of very smart people who are actual meeting producers that teach that kind of modules and content to my students. And it's a much more effective model.
One of the things I remember, because we've been to your university many times, at first you invited us, and then we created a program called Event Design Certificate Program Level 3 together. At least you hosted us there, and you made it all possible for the first time. So we're very grateful that you you helped us in those first strides, I think in the 2015, I believe. I think what I got from you when visiting your university and your faculty is that you have, as a faculty director, have an office, of course, but also a huge couch where you're actually meeting with your students, and I find that really, really intriguing. Can you describe that process of how you do that?
Yeah, it's a little bit unusual, but we have an area, as you described, outside my office for our bachelor students that is, we call them the couches, and it's literally a living room, as you've seen, and it's a very unusual aspect of the school. It's a huge part of our culture. It's open to the students all day long. They come in sort of like the sea. When the tide is high, they wash up into the office in between classes. They'll network, meet friends. We also, you experience the fact that we bring employers and meeting professionals and hotel executives to those couches to just hang out It's very sort of a relaxed environment. It's actually where we do recruiting. We don't have job fair like that. A lot of universities have these very transactional things called job fairs. Our employers come, sit on the couches, and recruit from there. And it's a completely different vibe because everyone sort of relaxes and lets their hair down. And it's more like a social setting than do you like me? Will you hire me? What are my qualifications? People really see each other for who they are. And it's a huge part of our culture. Voluntary, probably the number one thing that we hear from our students when they finally get into the couch culture is, why didn't I do this sooner? But it's not natural. It's a bit different.
But you built the culture, right? It's not across all faculties at San Diego State, right?
Not at all. No. It's a unique.
What drove you to do that? What is the? There's something behind it, right?
It's pretty simple. It's called hospitality. And hospitality for me is simply being nice to a stranger because you want to. And people can feel this warmth, but it has to be role modeled. One of the reasons I don't teach any of my bachelor's modules online is you can't teach warmth and hospitality through a screen to a 20-year-old. They can't learn this way. It's got to be role modeled. So this is a place where we begin the role modeling. My office, as you've seen, is right outside those couch area, and as is our reception desk. And if I see a new 20-year-old or 18-year-old kid walk into the office and no one's paying attention to him or her, I stop my meeting. I literally get up. I say, "Who are you? What are you here for? How can we help you?" And I shame my students and faculty and staff into like, "Why didn't you get up and go greet this person?" So I have to role model it myself to really bring it home to the rest of the team. But it's genuine, and it really is in my heart.
That's what you build. By the way, also here at IMAX, we see a lot of professors bringing their students with them, right? So it's a very interesting program of bringing students to a trade fair to get them to know what this industry is about. How do you see that, right? Because that also exists for a long time. And I think there's many students from benefiting from that experience. As my alma mater is Stanford University, and they're always bringing people towards this program. We have some very interesting conversations. We had two on the podcast on the first day, and they shared some very interesting views of what their first strides in this industry are, and like how massive this show is and how overwhelming it can sometimes be, but also the connections you can make on this show. Right? How do you see this?
Yeah, I have a very strong point of view, and it's that I really think there's three factors that affect a young person's education, getting them ready for these industries of events and hospitality. The first thing is, of course, academics, but I think it's only 1/3 of the total effect that the student needs. A second third is working while they're in university. This is extremely valuable in markets like San Diego. Virtually all my students work part-time, and they work all summer. The learning that goes on because of the synergy between classroom and real world is phenomenal because they connect all these dots. I didn't understand until I saw it. And so the third piece, which IMEX is a good example, is getting connected to the industry through industry congresses and meetings, education sessions, the amount of aha that goes on when they walk onto a trade show and they see that Serbia is exhibiting next to Japan, next to Hilton, next to these things called DMCs. It's phenomenal, the connections also that go on in these young people's brains, and they also find and learn that people are willing to talk to them at the right time. At IMAX, that happens to be Thursday today. If my students were here right now on Tuesday, I'd say don't talk to anybody because they're all trying to get business done. So I do think the students need some curation when they come to these kind of events, which we're happy to do as a faculty. But it also takes kind leaders to receive the students and help them interpret the very complex ecosystem.
I think it also we had, I think, 20 students come here to the booth and listen to one of our presentations. And you immediately recognize a few people who get it, right? Snapping my fingers, meaning to say, like, instantly, the kind of questions and the way they present themselves, and you see immediately these stars. Also for people exhibiting here or people walking around, like you can immediately identify talent. What is a talent according to you?
It's a fascinating question, and one I think there's two delicate sides balancing there, because I have the same impression and I say, wow, that's a high performer. This person's going to go very far because they're on it, they ask questions. But what I've learned is sometimes I get it wrong. And sometimes these very eager, enthusiastic people who are asking all the questions, maybe they're emulating a behavior, but maybe they're not going to be the strong performer later. I've seen some of my more quiet students actually become quite phenomenally successful, but they approach things differently. But I have to admit, I do have my favorites who I say, wow, that kid's got a great personality, really outgoing, but I might get it wrong sometimes, and my staff love to remind me, hey, this kid 10 years later, he's CEO and you're wrong. I hate to admit it, but I see it.
And also with that comment I made, it's not that I say the other people are not doing it right. I'm saying, like, some people really stand out and like have that, they make you feel a certain way. Like, okay, they listen to my speech, right? And then they ask questions, and of course, as a speaker, that is something you like, right? If people ask you the right questions about things. But you're right? So the way we look at talents and what are good talents, or what are, like, maybe some are still in the ag and some are like breaking out of the ag, and looking and wondering what this world could bring them. One of the things why we started the Event Design Collective and the Event Campus methodology is, and let's make it personal for me myself, I think the frustration of why is it that I cannot be a lawyer tomorrow, I cannot be an accountant tomorrow, but I definitely can become an event manager tomorrow. What's your take on that? Because you're teaching hospitality, but also there's some events as part of the hospitality program, maybe as minors. How do you look at the evolution of our industry?
You've jumped onto probably one of the most critical factors that I run into when I'm working with organizations large and small who are trying to tackle the event conundrum. And I've given this many years of thinking. And the reality is, and this is a fact, every human being over the age of 12 has planned an event. It might be called birthday party. It might be called, Christmas at grandma's. It might be called camping. But we've all planned something. And unlike a doctor or a physicist, like, we all haven't done operations yet. True. Like, we don't know how to calculate the molecular weight of something. But everyone has done an event. And it's really hard for them to know the difference between a good event and a bad event as a production person, and the elements that go into it. And the science of event production is fantastically complex, but not well respected. The other part of your excellent point is, none of us go to the dentist, for example, and say to the dentist, now I want you to drill this tooth here, and no. Put the Novocaine shot on this part, not that part. We never seem to instruct our dentist on what to do. But any human will go to a meeting, including IMEX, and say, they could do that better. Why is this truck here? It should be there. Like, everyone just takes liberties to be an expert.
Why is that, do you think?
Because everybody plans events. We all started it as young people, and we just think somehow we have an expertise in it. It's maddening to many of us, because we all happen to cook and eat as well, but not everyone says they're a good cook. But for some reason, everyone thinks they're very good at event production, and they're not.
That's interesting. Is there any way to solve this, or to repair this, or to make it whole?
I've been at this a very long time, and Haven't seen much progress. I liken a lot of what's happened with event production to an academic discipline that wasn't an academic discipline until 1950s. It was called marketing. And marketing really didn't exist in academia at all until 50s, 60s. And you may have heard the term madmen, advertising agencies from the 60s and 70s. It was very popular in America. And they were starting to develop these concepts of, how do we sell people cigarettes and alcohol and things they didn't really want, fancy cars. And we created these demands through marketing as a discipline. Marketing finally made it into the university world where I live in those 50s, 60s, 70s, and got very legitimate by 80s. But it took several decades. And I'm wondering, we created first event management program in America at bachelor's level. We created first one in America at San Diego State in master's level. I think maybe in a generation we'll move into legitimacy.
Yeah.
But for now, it's still not seen that way. Final point to your question. For years, I've referred to event production as the accidental industry because we're here at IMEX with thousands of event professionals, and you and I both know for a fact that way more than half the people here in this show got into event production by accident. Someone asked them, hey, produce this, produce that.
And people don't seem to retire, right? So we were yesterday at IMEX Gala, and there's a lot of people who actually love this business so much or love this industry so much that they cannot say goodbye even after retirement. Like it's a fascinating.
There's a saying in America that this industry gets in your blood. Yeah. And I think it has to do with the adrenaline and the cyclical ups and downs, the very high highs, the sort of low lows, and I think it sort of goes into a topic that's also very front of my mind these days, which is the future talent pipeline for this industry is not encouraging because the typical younger person today grew up with a screen, not a friend. And that sort of let's get this in your blood is becoming an increasingly rare phenomena from what I'm seeing with young people. When you say to them, you should try hard, you're going to make a lot of money and satisfaction by helping people experience something. And they're like, no. I just want to watch it on my screen or, produce a music video and, that's going to be my life. And to say that, come to a live event, be on your feet for 12 or 14 hours at IMEX, they're not so interested anymore.
Yeah. So one of the things I took note of one of your stories you told me I think 2 years ago when we were having a dinner at what it was, a Russian restaurant in San Diego.
Yeah. It was Georgian restaurant.
Yeah, Georgian. Yeah. Sorry for mixing that up. Yeah. So we had actually a pretty cool quote. I wrote it down, but maybe you can reiterate. Right? It's about like age and wisdom and youth and agility. Right? Remember that one?
Little bit.
Yeah, so the idea you said, like when you are young, you are very agile, right? But you lack wisdom. When you're older, you lack agility, but you have wisdom, right? So there's a scale.
It's one of the sad things of being in your 60s, I suppose, is you start to figure these things out. And there's a saying in America too that youth is wasted on the young, and you can bend and break when you're young, but you can't predict as well. And I'm of an age where I watch cycles and I see things that are being created, and I can sometimes predict what's going to succeed or not. And I think with agility versus wisdom comes another factor that been going through my mind a lot lately, and that's risk. And a lot of young people are happy to take risks. They don't have anything to lose. They don't think about the consequences. I think a lot of older people who could create new organizations and entities aren't willing to take that risk. And as I've been reflecting a lot the last couple of years, I've decided to really start taking new risks. So my wife and I are launching a new entity called the AI Hospitality Alliance. And you and I were talking about AI earlier, and I'm a heavy user like you are. And it doesn't make us a millennial, it doesn't make us Gen Z, it doesn't make us Gen A. David Adler, who you may know, has a great phrase for what I think people like you and I are. He calls us perennials. And we transcend generations. And while I don't have the agility I have, I am, I think, a little bit more wise than I was earlier. But I'm also now embracing risk and thinking, why not? I've raised my family, I've got a great life, I'm going to take some business risks and create some new stuff, just as you've done with EDC.
Yeah, thank you very much. Carl, last question. What is it, if you look at like all these years at IMAX, like in Vegas and Frankfurt, what is it you take from, I think it's 23 years of IMAX already, how has that helped the industry?
It's a wonderful thing that's also been on my mind a lot. It's one of the reasons I'm going to go back and plug this alliance thing that we're launching in AI. IMAX is a beautiful marketplace. Ray Bloom's vision to do the hosted buyer model, to get these people with the large amounts of spend to come in here, for people to attend for free. The suppliers are paying the freight, if you will, to be here. It's a beautiful market. And if you go back in human history, there were markets in this city on the Main River 2,000 years ago. I guarantee it. I wasn't here, but I guarantee you there was somebody having a market. It was probably in a village, and they're selling potatoes for something else and trading. And modern markets look and act different. The amount of spend that goes on and the turnover here has got to be astronomical in 2.5 days. They're renting out hectares of building here. It's incredible. The people flew in from all over the world and the commerce that's going on. So this marketplace is a natural human condition that's just been reimagined by a very clever organization and monetized beautifully.
And it's a long time ago already, right? So the same as I say about associations, they will change. The same as exhibitions, they will change, right? So, of course, they have changed, but not in essence, right? So there's still a need for bringing people together from either people would like to buy something and people would like to sell something, to make it very, very, very simple. I think that is what IMAX has done in a great deal, in a very good way. And what the opposite thing of it is, or what the downside of it is that where people can travel here, attend for free, consume education, and can do business, where that actually, at least in Europe, is actually softly killing some other conferences and events where people actually need to pay for the same kind of content or the same kind of business, right? That's a hard thing.
I have a very strong opinion on this as well, and some of your listeners may not appreciate what I'm going to say, but I think those are run by trade associations, many of them, not private enterprises. And trade associations take on a life of their own. They're quite tribal. They have policies and histories that aren't necessarily nimble. And I won't call out any one, but they all have similar kinds of conferences, and they're not as good as this one. This one's best in class because, in my opinion, it's run by a business. And it doesn't have this sort of tribal leaders and advisory board that is, been there for 30 years telling the same things over and over again, and they're much more nimble here.
Thank you, Carl, for being here, and I'll also include Carl's new event, a new association he was pointing out in the show notes, so that we actually can actually dive a little bit deeper into that new alliance, I should say. Thank you, Carl.
Pleasure. Good to see you.
This has been another episode of the Design to Change Designer Conversation series. Explore these conversations and additional content at designtochange.online. Want more right now? Tune into the backstage episode of this conversation and hear what the experts discuss off stage.